This is Stephen Kotler, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
This is Christina Rasmussen, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Dave Meltzer, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and this is Your Superior Self. Thank you guys for taking the time to download and hang out with me today. It's going to be a pretty cool conversation with today's guest, W. Bruce Cameron, the author of the new book, A Dog's Courage, which is out currently. So I definitely suggest that you guys could pick it up. He is the author, #1 New York Times best-selling author and #1 USA Today best-selling author of A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Journey, A Dog's Way Home, which are all now major motion pictures. And this is the latest addition to the plethora of books that he's written, A Dog's Courage. It's very beautifully written. I love his writing style. I love how he is very detailed in his descriptions of a scene and how he just kind of, I don't even know how you describe it. It's like you're getting the scene. You can be there. You can sense it. You feel like you're there with him. His technique is very similar, and I'll say it here. You'll hear it first. Very similar to that of Ernest Hemingway, and we talk about that a little bit in this conversation. I just love the details. It's all about the details for me in an author. Sometimes authors tend to go over the details a little too quickly, and you don't get the sense that you're there in the scene. And I really appreciate Bruce's talent in doing that in this book, and actually in all his books. He's such a talented writer. And I can confirm, I will not confirm nor deny that I teared up at the end of the A Dog's Journey movie. I didn't know what it was about. The family and I are sitting there watching it, and right at the end, I think it was the end. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Tears were rolling down this face. I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm not scared to admit it. It is what it is. It's a beautiful moment in a movie about a dog who reincarnates into different dogs so that he can find his way back to his owner. Such a beautifully written movie. And it's funny because I didn't even have Bruce Cameron on my radar, really. I mean, he's a fabulous author. Like, it definitely was a great opportunity to interview him, and I'm very thankful for that and blessed. However, I'm sitting there watching the movie, and I'm like thinking to my wife, I'm like, how did they come up with the idea of reincarnation? Like, I want to talk. I wish I could have some more insight on this. Like, for one, people can look at reincarnation and they're okay with it if they see it through a dog, but if it's we direct it towards ourselves, people don't want to go there. Anyway, that's a different conversation. But I wanted to have a conversation with the guy who wrote this story. I was like, that's pretty cool to think that someone's out there and has this idea that dogs reincarnate. I would love to have a conversation with that, and I left it at that. Next thing you know, I get an email from Bruce Cameron's marketing team and asking me if it was cool if he would come on the show and send me a book. I was like, absolutely, for sure. It's just crazy how the universe works. You put something out there and you let it go, and it comes back to you. And that's a lesson in law of attraction, my friends. And here's a small clip of Bruce describing how this story, A Dog's Purpose, came to be.
Yeah. So the impetus for it really was the fact that I was divorced. I was starting to date this woman. She's very special to me. In fact, she's my writing partner and more. And I was driving up the coast of California with her, and she turned to me out of nowhere and said, "I will never have another dog," because she had lost a dog, and she's like, "I can't go through that again." And this was such a deal breaker. I'm thinking, well, maybe what I'll do is at the next gas station, I'll just take off and just leave her behind, because there's no, but just because when you get to be my age, finding somebody you're compatible with is more difficult. I decided to give this one a shot. So instead, I made up a story for her. And what I wanted to convince her was that the love that she had with her dog was still there. She could have that same love with a different dog if she just opened her heart. And so I made up this story about a reincarnating dog. And in the process, I told her the whole thing, the whole story. It took a big chunk of that drive, and I'm just talking away and she's just listening. And by the end of the story, she's sobbing. And she said, well, you have to write that as a book. That can't just be a story that you're telling me in the car. That's a book. And she liked the story so much, she married me.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. I really, really like the part where he's talking about she needed to have an open heart and love again. And I think that you can apply this, even though it's a story about a dog, you can apply it to our lives as well. I think you need to have an open heart and accept things, because there are greater things out there that can come your way. And if we're closed off and we don't want to think about it, or we think it's too much for us to handle, then we're closed off and we're small and we don't receive the things that the universe wants to give us. This is just an example. I mean, who knows what could happen? Keep an open heart, and you could be producing an amazing story about reincarnation in dogs and have Dennis Quaid play the main character. Yeah. Stay open, my friends. Stay open and love with all your being. So, yeah, go to traydowns.com. Leave me a message. Let me know what your thoughts are on any topic. It can be reincarnation. It can be, I don't know, a dog's journey or a dog's purpose. And I want to know what your thought. Did you cry? I want to know if you cried at the end of that movie, for sure. Let me know. Follow me on Instagram, tdowns80. Leave me a message over there. And also check out YouTube. I started putting more videos on YouTube. Not just the podcast episodes, but they are the video of the podcast episodes, but you know what I mean. Not just audio. It has visual content as well, which is pretty cool, because then you can kind of see the process of the interview and how it goes. So yeah, without further ado, my friends, this is the conversation that I had with W. Bruce Cameron.
This is W. Bruce Cameron, and you're listening to Your Superior Self.
Done like a professional. That's major league right there. Bruce, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show, man.
It's my pleasure.
So I read parts of A Dog's Courage, and you being the author of this book that's coming out next month in May, or this month in May, because it's when this is coming out. Your storytelling ability is awesome, man. I don't even know what else to say, because I read a ton of books. I mean, I guess because my books are morely like empirical researched articles, I kind of get used to that, but
yeah,
your storytelling is like, I love how the story is just always evolving, man. I mean, have you always been gifted writer like that, or did you have to work towards that?
I was such a storyteller from the very beginning. I think I started telling stories in the womb, and I was like, I popped out into the world with an almost uncanny inability to distinguish between reality and my stories, in terms of when my parents would ask me a question such as, who ate all the sugar donuts. I always had a story, it made sense to me. I couldn't figure out how they were constantly able to figure out, perhaps because my lips were encrusted with powdered sugar, they would figure out that I was telling a lie. I was lying. But to me, they were just stories, and there's nothing, a story is such an innocuous thing, and it's so important to our lives to be able to tell stories. I never saw the harm in it, even though I got in trouble a lot for telling stories. And the writing thing came later, when I realized that I could put words down, that I could write them down. That meant the stories that I was trying to hold in my head now had a different storage medium, and that made room for more stories. So for me, it was like not just an expression, but like a download. Like I could free up unfragmented space on my hard drive so I can make up new stories. And that has been my existence for as long as I can remember.
It's so interesting you say that. Do you ever look back at some of the pieces of work that you create and say, who the hell wrote this?
Oh my God. I had that experience today. I was recording an audiobook of one of my children's books, and I came across a sentence that was so poorly constructed. I actually couldn't read it as written. The director kept stopping me and saying, you need to do that again. You have to read it word for word. An audiobook is unforgiving. You have to make it exactly the way it's written, because there are school kids that are sitting in classrooms reading along with you and learning to read because of it. So you can't go off script just because you would like to rewrite it. But it really messed me up. So yeah, it's absolutely agonizing as an author to pull a book back up and take a look at it long after it's left the barn. That is just an incredibly frustrating experience.
Because I feel like I've written some papers. I mean, nothing compared to your work, New York Times bestselling author, all of that. Like, I'm talking about like research papers, and I get into these zones, these flow states, and I'm like writing. And I meant like, I guess I've written a lot of poorly structured sentences, so I recognize that right off the gate. But when it comes to the good stuff, like I'll read something and I'm like, man, that sounds good. Like, who wrote that? Like, it's funny because I was talking to Stephen Kotler, who is one of my favorite authors as well. He talks about flow states, and like he gets up really early, gets after it early because, obviously, the sleep patterns, he's coming out of, deep sleep. So his mind is very, very open to new ideas and I guess storytelling methods. I don't know, but he gets up early and he writes stuff. And then by the afternoon, he's like, man, like, I don't even know where this stuff comes from. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like creatives like yourself just experience different levels of like consciousness and when they're doing the thing that lights them up.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to give myself the same credit. I feel like I'm much less about getting into a flow state and much more about following a blueprint and much more about hammering out the story. I spend so much of my time outlining a story. Like, you're reading A Dog's Courage right now. And that's a pretty straightforward tale in terms of the story arc. But there's a lot of surprises and twists. And I would write down something, and I actually do the old index card method, except for I do it on the computer, and I move the cards around, and then I keep reworking that, and it goes through several drafts before I'm ready to start. But when I'm ready to start, I have outlined the thing to the point where I know everything that's going to happen. There aren't any surprises. There's no flow state, and now I'm just writing down what the cards say, and so. I guess the part where everything is just coming to me, it'll come to me on the Stairmaster, it'll come to me on the bike path, it'll come to me walking in the woods. My wife is a writer, among other things, and I like to bounce ideas off of her. She'll say, okay, we're on vacation. I don't want to have this turn into a story meeting. I'm like, yeah, but what would happen? Wait, let's just consider, what if that one guy, what if we did away with that character? And she's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I haven't read this book yet. Stop. Please stop. I'm on vacation. But I can't stop. And I won't stop.
That's awesome, man. Dog's Purpose. Man, I tell you what, dude. I cannot confirm or deny that I cried during that movie.
Your secret's safe with me. Yeah, put hidden cameras in the theater. We would focus on all these men who supposedly didn't cry. There were some real bad allergies in those theaters where people were constantly wiping their eyes. I've had men get angry at me because they don't want to cry and they don't want to have these feelings. But come on, I mean, you're dealing with one of the most tender, profound relationships you're going to have. You're never going to have any other being who is going to love you so unconditionally than your dog. And so that relationship is so valuable to us. And I've had children, so I'm here to tell you, dogs love you a lot more than your kids do, especially as they get older. You're going to really you're just going to treasure your relationship with your dog. So of course there's sadness when you lose a dog. A Dog's Purpose is a very special story because it turns out the dog doesn't ever die. The dog lives forever. and is able, through a series of wonderful events, to find his way back to his original boy, so he can help that original boy deal with a bad stage of life. Literally save the boy, which I think is a very sweet story.
Is that you, boss dog? Is that you, boss dog? I mean, I say it to my wife all the time. Like, it's like an ongoing, thing with us, just because she's like, I'm fighting back the tears. Like, and she's like watching me. She's like just sitting there watching me, because she's like, she's crying over there too. She's cool. I get it. She's crying, but I'm like, I'm not gonna let you see me cry. And then I'm like, on the other side, I'm just like tearing up. One tear comes down. I'm like, Bruce Cameron got me crying over here.
Yeah, that was A Dog's Purpose. I've had so many people tell me they made the mistake of putting that movie on an airplane, and so they're sitting there silently with the headphones on, just sobbing, with people in the cabin looking at them like, what is happening to you?
Where did you come up with that book? Like, where did you, I mean, the idea, reincarnation, like, where did that come from?
Yeah. So the impetus for it really was the fact that I was divorced. I was starting to date this woman. She's very special to me. In fact, she's my writing partner, and I was driving up the coast of California with her, and she turned to me out of nowhere and said, I will never have another dog, because she had lost a dog, and she's like, I can't go through that again. And this was such a deal breaker. I'm thinking, well, maybe what I'll do is at the next gas station, I'll just take off and just leave her behind, because there's no, but just because when you get to be my age, finding somebody you're compatible with is more difficult. I decided to give this one a shot. So instead, I made up a story for her. And what I wanted to convince her was that the love that she had with her dog was still there. She could have that same love with a different dog if she just opened her heart. And so I made up this story about a reincarnating dog. And in the process, I told her the whole thing, the whole story. It took a big chunk of that drive, and I'm just talking away and she's just listening. And by the end of the story, she's sobbing, and she said, well, you have to write that as a book. That can't just be a story that you're telling me in the car. That's a book. And she liked the story so much, she married me. And she, when I wrote a Dog's Purpose, she was involved in editing the book and in helping me market it to Hollywood. She's a Hollywood director, so she has contacts out here. And we did the Dog and Pony show, where I guess I was the dog and she was the pony, because I would go in, I'd sit there on the couch and drink bottled water while she did this whole presentation, and then they would be crying. And so we sold the book as a movie. It took forever, because that's what happens out here in Hollywood, is things take forever. But then one day we get the call that they wanted us to show up on set because they were going to start shooting the movie, and we were screenwriters on the project. So it was quite the life-changing experience for me. I didn't set out to be the dog book guy. In fact, the next novel I wrote after A Dog's Purpose is a book I'm very proud of, sort of a magical premise as well, where a boy becomes convinced that he can communicate with a grizzly bear, and it's called Emery's Gift. I love that book, but it doesn't have a dog on the cover, and it didn't sell nearly as well as my dog books. So I became more or less wedded to this idea that if you're reading a Bruce Cameron book, you're reading a book that's got dogs in it.
Man. So, I mean, are you going to still go after this dog, book stuff? Are you really going to just, like Matthew McConaughey, like he was the guy that always did the chick flicks, right? And then he talks about his biography where he really had to make a stand. He was like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, that's not me. And it took a long, long time. Do you think you have that in you to take a stance like that and say, you know what, I'm not writing about this anymore?
Well, first of all, I'm going to use your quote. Bruce Cameron is the Matthew McConaughey of authors. I think that's going on my book jacket.
I'll sign off on that quote.
Okay, there you go. So this last Christmas, COVID Christmas, I published a book called A Dog's Perfect Christmas. So it sounds like it's just another dog book, but it really isn't. It's told from point of view of people as well as the dogs, multiple points of view, and it's a story of a family dealing with regular, modern, everyday life. But then when the mom gets sick, it threatens to tear them apart because she's the glue. She's the person that holds it all together. And when she goes into the hospital, now they're headed toward Christmas, and dad's got career problems, and the grandfather is still grieving, is frankly suicidally depressed, and the teenage girl is a teenage girl, which is really hard. And so it looks like they're going to blow up. And then into this comes a brand new puppy. And that just rearranges all the pieces on the chessboard. And so it's a dog story, but not really. I mean, it's got a dog title more than it has a dog story. It's mostly a people story. And what I'm going to do, I think, is stick with dogs. I'm going to have dogs in my books, but I'm also going to spend a lot of time dwelling on other aspects of character and plot. A Dog's Courage, my brand new book, is all told from the point of view of Bella. It's the sequel to A Dog's Way Home. Bella is going through so many adventures, and when people read this book, I'm hoping what they'll say is, wow, there's a lot of action and adventure in this book. It's not just dog. It's got much more than that going on.
Sure. She's a beautiful dog, by the way.
Yeah. That dog on the cover, that's Shelby. And Shelby played Bella in the movie A Dog's Way Home. And when we put together the project A Dog's Way Home, we made a commitment that all the dogs in that movie would be rescue dogs, every single one. So in order to pull that off, we had to do a nationwide search for a rescue dog who looked like the dog on the cover of A Dog's Way Home. And there was finally a time when we got a phone call from a shelter. We don't put out this massive search. We got a call from a shelter outside of Nashville, way outside of Nashville, in the hills of Tennessee. They said, we found a dog living in the junkyard, like literally living on garbage. And she had all these parasites, and she was starving. And we have no idea if she ever had people in her life, but she seems to be a wonderful dog. And so we flew down there, we being Catherine Michaud, my wife, who's also a director, because she had to see, does this dog look like it's got the look for camera? And we took a dog trainer, because the dog trainer had to be able to say, I can train this dog to be a movie dog. And then I went, because I'd never had Nashville hot chicken, and I thought this was a great opportunity, because I had no purpose otherwise. But I went and we met this dog, and she was so wonderful and so lovely. And she went from being a junkyard dog to being a bona fide movie star. And now she lives in Hollywood. And she was just over to visit a few days ago. She comes over every once in a while to hang out with me and Catherine and our dog Tucker. Tucker has a crush on Shelby, but it's a movie star. I don't think he's got a shot.
Easy pal.
I don't think he's got a shot, but he thinks he does. And so what the heck, that's what happens out here. So I just wanted to say, so Shelby is a wonderful dog, and she's on the cover. And she's also, I wrote a book about her called Shelby's Story for Children, because of her experience going from being a junkyard dog to being the cover dog for A Dog's Courage.
Let me ask you that. So how hard, is it easier or harder to write a children's book after writing these types of books?
Well, I kind of cheat. So I when I write a book for a child, I don't say to myself, okay, this is a kid's book, so I'm going to write it in a way that is just designed to be sort of reduced to child level. I think the worst thing writers can do is dumb down an adult book for children. Every time I see a movie that's written for kids where something is just so stupid, the kids know that it's stupid. They know they're being condescended to. So I write a book as if I'm writing it for a grown-up. And then when I send it in, the reason I cheat is I do have a book editor who does children's books, and she'll go through and she'll make note of vocabulary that maybe is too sophisticated, or situations that maybe are not childlike. I always forget the rules about how much male, female, or interpersonal contact there can be. I mean, there's really not, in younger reader books, there's really not kissing, so that gives you an idea of where I I stop. I can't go there. But I know these general rules, but the real specific stuff, I'm learning every time I write a children's book.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot of rules with that, man. I love it's so funny. And take this for whatever you want, but Ernest Hemingway had a way about him in describing these towns. The Sun Also Rises, I think it is. Where you feel like, I mean, he didn't have Google back in the day, but he was able to describe these towns in Europe to a T. Like if you went and Googled them right now, like he would, these towns would look exactly like the way he wrote, about them in his books. You do the same thing. You talk about this town to a T, and it's like I feel like I'm just standing there. How much research do you have to do that? Are you just being creative, or are you actually using factual details about these certain towns to describe them?
So first of all, I think we need to amend your quote. Now you're going to say if Ernest Hemingway and Matthew McConaughey had a baby, it would be Bruce Cameron. But so yeah, I get that. So, well, here's something interesting. The town of Pesario in the novel A Dog's Courage doesn't actually exist, and there's a reason for that, and it is simply that I didn't want to write about a town that gets obliterated by fire and have it be a real town, have it be Breckenridge, Colorado, or something like that, because I think I think that's just bad karma.
Sure. So
I made up a town, but I do and did spend a lot of time in Colorado, because Colorado is different. The mountains are different in Colorado than they are in, say, Idaho, where I set one of my books, where that's the Selkirk Mountains. They are completely different. They have a different feel to them. The air is different. The clouds are different. It's so much more wet, but it's not just the Rocky Mountains with water. It's something else. It's a completely different experience. And I didn't know that until I traveled to these places. So, and I'm jumping on an airplane to go next month to go to Kansas City, because I'm basing a big chunk of my next book in Kansas City. And I haven't been there in a long time. And I have to kind of walk the streets and taste the air and see what the trees look like in May, because that's the time setting for my next book. So I do a lot of that geographic research. I do a lot of experiencing what it's like to hang out with dogs. If I'm writing a dog book, I make sure I spend a lot of time looking at different dogs. Dogs are very different with different personalities, and I don't want to just write the same dog over and over again and have it become like generic dog.
Sure.
I don't have a way to quantify the amount of research I do, but it is definitely an ongoing part of making novels and making movies.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's truly a gift. I mean, to be able to explain and express yourself, or express the way that the town not only looks but feels. And like, I'm reading your, even though that town doesn't exist, I feel like it does exist. Like I feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
And that's what I really noticed about your writing. And then the way that you talked about earlier, and how you can weave it in. You know what I mean? You can weave in the story in and out, in and out, in and out, and keep me, on my edge, just waiting for the next thing to happen. I think you did a beautiful job in A Dog's Courage. I know this comes out next month, but I can't, I'm definitely going to be putting this out there for people to buy, man.
Oh, thank you. I'm really proud of A Dog's Courage, because it is, for one thing, it's the book no one said I could write, which is a sequel to A Dog's Way Home, because they're like, that book is a standalone. You can't have a sequel to that. I'm like, well, I really like the character of Bella, though, and I have some ideas on how I could bring Bella back to another adventure, and I think it worked out.
Sure. No, it definitely did. When you were talking about your wife now, and you were telling her about the story for the movie, do you believe in the reincarnation? How did that idea pop in your head? I mean, I know that she didn't want to lose another dog, but I mean, I don't think if I would have been creative enough to say, all right, we're gonna do something reincarnation.
So I deal with reincarnation as a theme a lot. I'm really intrigued by it. I certainly am willing to do it, but on the other hand, I'm not willing to do 8th grade again. We're going to have to come up with a solution for that one. But I absolutely I'm absolutely fascinated by this idea that instead of moving to some other dimensional experience, we circle back around and have an earthly presence yet again. That's intriguing as all hell to me. I'm really intrigued by that. So my hopes are that I'll find out and that I'll be pleasantly surprised.
You'll find out.
But I don't have it as part of my, like, it's not a religious thing for me. I don't fervently believe in it, or, look around and see a frog and say, hey, that's my Uncle Larry. I don't do that.
You do need to read Ian Stevenson. So he's a professor at University of Virginia. I'm a big fan of Raymond Moody. He wrote Life After Life, or was it Life After Life? Yeah. With near-death experiences. And Ian Stevenson, I found through him, writes about reincarnation, like children with reincarnation. Like he studies a lot of, he does a lot of research with them, and their stories are insane.
Yeah.
So your reincarnation stories were just like, reading Ian Stevenson's books. I mean, it was just like, boom, you die, and the next thing you know, you're doing something else. So that's why I was like, man, what's funny though, is because I was watching the movie, and this is funny how the universe works. I'm watching your movie, and I was like, I watched both of them, and both of them did, got a little misty eyed, some allergies or something. But I was like, I really want to talk to that guy. Like, I would really like to talk to him about his take on reincarnation. And months go by, or whatever. And then, like, this book comes out, and have an opportunity to talk to you. I just thought that was amazing, dude. Like, it's just crazy how the universe works, dude.
Yeah. Thank you. A Dog's Courage, of course, doesn't have reincarnation in it. But I think that, what's really interesting about the books, there's 3 books in the series that deal with reincarnation. It's the A Dog's Purpose series. There's A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Journey, and A Dog's Promise. And two of the 3 have been made into movies. And the third one we've written the script for, and certainly Dennis Quaid wants to make it. So I think there's a good shot that we'll have a 3rd book in the series be turned into a 3rd movie in the series. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. The take on it that I have in terms of what people's reaction to reincarnation is interesting. It seems to be much easier to believe that it can happen in a dog than in a human being, and that the dog might very well remember. Someone will tell me, I swear my dog Trixie is the reincarnated soul of my dog Sneakers, and because they all do the same thing and they behave the same way, even though they were different breeds. And I'm really intrigued by how much people believe that, and think there must be something to it, or people wouldn't keep coming to me and telling me that they've had that experience.
Sure. There's just too many dogmas associated, in our belief systems, or, as a human, it's easier to portray, think of a dog, perceive them to do it than us because of our programming and everything. But it is what it is. I'm like you. I want it to be real. Like, I want, hopefully I have enough good karma in this life that I come back, as a writer, as an author or something in the next life. What, growing up, did you have a dog or anything like that you were close to?
Yeah. We didn't have a dog until I was around 8 years old. And then we never didn't have a dog. My parents discovered how much easier dogs were than children. And there were 3 children in my family, so they got 3 dogs. So they had a replacement for each one of the kids in case something happened to us. And then that's how I grew up. We had a pack. We had 3 dogs all the time. It was amazing how much life was about those dogs from that moment on. My father, who was a great cook but didn't have much time, found time to he made the dog food for the kids. For the dogs, he would cook the dog food. He wouldn't do anything for the kids, but he would cook the dog food and serve it to the dogs. And it smelled great and it looked great. And my mom was the kind of cook that would open a can and then open another can. And then if she wanted to make it a big fancy dinner, she'd open another can, but that was kind of her cooking. So my dad wouldn't cook for the kids. It was a good lesson because it taught me just where I was in the family hierarchy. And I was a skinny kid. But the end result is I just came to believe that dogs are like they're part of the lubrication of life. They make things easier. They are there for you when you have a crisis, when you're feeling awful. You can reach out, you can cuddle your dog to you, and your dog will understand you need that. Your dog will melt into your arms, and your dog will feel those feelings. And they're just so sensitive to us, and they want so badly to help us. I just think that my life was made richer for having had a dog since the age of 8.
Absolutely, man. Definitely. Well, what, like you said, the movies and everything, Hollywood, things take a long time to progress. Were you able to say anything about who was casted in the movies?
Well, the screenwriter is theoretically consulted on things like this. In practice, they would say things like, "Don't you think Dennis Quaid would be good?" You know, and you're like, "Yeah, that would be good." When I had a TV show that was based on one of my books, it was called 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. And there was actually a lot of controversy over who was going to star in that movie or star in that TV show. So they actually asked for me to weigh in and vote. And I voted for John Ritter, who eventually was the star of that TV show. And that was the only time I felt like I had anything to contribute. The more movies we make, the more we are consulted. Catherine and I are always screenwriters. And we now are also producers. And the movie that we are trying to get made right now that I can't tell you about because, I don't know what's the state secret. But if we get this movie going, one of the big factors has been who are the human actors going to be. And we've been talking to the director about it a lot because we have just grown in influence. Success is such a great currency out here. And we've had successful movies. So they listen to us a little more. One flop though, and we're back to zero. One flop and we have to start over.
So my daughter, that's all she watches are like these, what are they? The puppy on Netflix, like these superhero puppies. And
yeah,
oh man, I have faith in you though. I feel like you're going to keep going, right, riding that wave of success and you'll be up there in no time. I can't tell you the way that you're able to describe things, the way that you're able to write. Like, do you ever venture outside of your comfort zone, like with books? You're a screenwriter, right? Like, do you ever do anything for like comedy or anything like that? Like, do you venture out there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I used to be a humor columnist. I was a humor columnist for years for the Rocky Mountain News and then later for Creators Syndicate. And my first couple of books were humor books. So I was known for writing humor before I came up with this dog book thing. And I've got a mystery series that I wrote that's based on a repo man in Northern Michigan who solves crimes. And I've got I wrote a book called The Dog Master, which though it's got dog in the title, is actually the story of how human beings came to domesticate the wolf, how that disruptive technology, if you will, changed the entire course of our evolution because it gave us a hunting partner and made us more successful at a time when we were prey. We were lunch, basically. We were a doomed species, too weak, these stupid big brains that weren't any good at all. But the wolves changed that, and we turned them into dogs through breeding. So I wrote that book, The Dog Master. It takes place in the Paleolithic. It's completely different. I always cringe when somebody says that they bought a copy of The Dog Master for their 9-year-old child. And I'll say, the Paleolithic was a brutal time. There are real adult themes in that book. And maybe you should read it first before you hand it to your child. And sometimes I get some pushback and they say, wow, I wish I'd known just how brutal this book was. But I've never had a kid complain. Anyway, so I push myself outside of my comfort zone. But I'm also very comfortable with the idea of writing from a dog's POV, that I have a real knack for it, if you will, now that I've done it several times. And I love writing from the point of view of an animal that's excited to go for a car ride and excited to get to the end of the car ride and excited to get back in the car and take another car ride. I mean, it's like that kind of joie de vivre is just so uplifting, and it just makes every day a pleasure. I don't have to read about grim, awful situations because dogs don't ever experience the world that way.
Sure. That's awesome, man. How much research did you have to do for that book about the wolves and how we train them, or how we got them to be our hunting partner? Like where did you go for that research?
Well, I mostly just read, oddly there are still books and still libraries. I read a lot. I again, I don't quantify it, but I did spend months and months reading about it. What was interesting to me was I have subsequently read a few people who have the series, have the theory that is espoused in the book, The Dog Master, which is that we, by taming the wolf, we not only made us able to survive, but we and the wolves started to evolve together. That the humans who got along really well with the wolves and could form this empathetic relationship were more likely to be successful hunters, were more likely to reproduce, were more likely to pass both the social and, frankly, the inherited DNA aspects of that relationship down to their kids, who would then have these same wolves who had descended from wolves that were able to get along with people. Pretty soon, there was a big chunk of human history, in my opinion, where the most successful hunters were those that had the best relationship with wolves who were becoming dogs. And there's no other species really that is so dependent upon us and looks to us. You can, frankly, if you have a horse, you could probably open the barn door and let the horse out. And depending upon where you are, the horse may live a very nice life. There are many cats who decide that they don't want to live inside anymore. They want to go live in the wild, and they just vanish and they're out hunting mice, So there are lots of domesticated animals who can do just fine without us. A dog can't. You never see a pack of dachshunds pulling down an elk or a buffalo, right? So we have absolutely made these animals our cohorts in the world, and we have to therefore respect them, take care of them.
I agree. That'd be so. I don't even know what I would do if I saw a pair of dachshunds taken down on deer or something like that. Like I just
be amazing.
Be like, what? Oh God, that's hilarious. Where can people find this book? I mean, it's coming out in May. Go to your website. What's your website? Like, I'm sure it's going to be on Amazon. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Like, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of websites. The best one, just for in terms of getting book plates, so you can have signed book plates, is adogspurpose.com. Got a lot of stuff going on with adogspurpose.com. But I'm lucky enough that my books are carried by all the bookstores, and they're carried in Target and Walmart. That has really helped me, and Amazon, of course, Barnes and Noble, and that really helped during the worst of COVID, when bookstores were just not operational, but Target and Walmart were still open. Sam's Club and all the rest of them, they carry my books. So I think that if anybody wants to find a dog's courage, they should not have a problem. They're out there.
Sure. Do you have a foundation or anything for dogs?
I support a bunch of charities. I have a strong relationship with Best Friend Animal Society. And then I'm on the board of a charity in Denver called Life is Better Rescue. And it has evolved from its original mission when the Denver municipal shelter was such a horrible place. And now it's much more of a shelter that, like any animal shelter, we like to go to places that are distressed by natural disasters or other situations where there's suddenly a lot of homeless cats and dogs, and we will rescue dogs from those areas and bring them back to Denver and successfully rehome them. And we specialize in animals that need particular help to be rehomed, like an animal that has medical issues. So we will do the surgery, or we will cure the disease or whatever it is, if it's possible, so that we can find a home for a dog that maybe the original owner couldn't afford the treatments, or maybe nobody would adopt the animal because it needs surgery on its leg or something. But we pay for that, and then we can rehome the dog. So, and cats, of course, and horses, and we've even rescued snakes. But I want to stop right there and say, look, animal rescue, those people are so dedicated, and it takes so much time, and it is so hard. And I can be on the board, and I can write checks, and I can support them any way I can. And I donate books for auction and things like that, but I can't pretend to match the dedication or the time and effort that these wonderful volunteers put into this work.
Sure. No, that's awesome. Bruce Cameron, aka Bruce Mcconaughey, aka Bruce Hemingway. This has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Last question though. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, that's interesting. I have not given much thought to that, because I always assumed until recently that I was immortal. But I suppose that what I want my legacy to be is, after reading my books, people walk away with the sense that dogs are sentient beings. There are some people who don't believe dogs can think, that they're feeling beings, that they have real emotions, and that, as I said earlier, we made them into what they are. We domesticated them to the point where they can no longer fend for themselves. So we have to regard them as our wards, as our children. And so what I want people to do when they finish one of my books is contemplate rescuing a dog, fostering an animal, giving to an animal shelter, but helping to address this situation that we created, which was to sort of irresponsibly breed too many animals, and now we have to find homes for them.
I love it. Bruce, this has been amazing, my brother. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. This has been a great time.